Brothers and sisters, thank you very much to all the brothers and sisters out there. I really appreciate you're part of a Christian family. I really appreciate your comments. I want to say thank you to Lisa Hyper, Sister Lisa Hyper, Sister Stephanie F, and Brother N Joel, and many others who kindly give me good comments. As the title suggests, I want to do another video why I believe that we are experiencing the book of Revelation before our very eyes, and people are unaware that this is about the white horseman, the first horseman in Revelation chapter 6 is actually, I believe, it represents the plague or pandemic, the pestilence, and why I say that, it says that in Revelation 6 that the white horseman and the horse is all white, so I'm going to look at the colour white, the actual word meaning. I will show a little clip of a video which will give us more clues to what it is. And as I said, many people believe they're still waiting for the Antichrist to break the covenant. He's wearing the one on the white horseman. Many people believe is Antichrist, and he's got a bow in his hands. People think, I've got to wait for him to come and break and make a covenant, because he's got a bow in his hand. But people don't realise this bow is nothing to do with a rainbow. See, this is a military bow that he's holding in his hands. The Greek word for rainbow is iris, and this is toxon, which you will get toxic or poison from. Of course, when God promised to Noah, he made a covenant with Noah back then. True that he put a rainbow to remind him not to flood the earth, but this is a military bow, toxon, not iris. And since when did a bad person wear white? Everywhere in the Bible, white signifies pure, clean, holy. These are not literal people, just like the fourth horseman, death and Hades. No, it just means this symbolising, as I'm going to explain, the white horse is pestilence, the red horse is war, and famine is the black horse. So in Zechariah 6:1 it talks about, and then I raised my eyes up and saw, and look, there were 4 chariots. This is in the time of Zechariah, coming forth between 2 mountains, and the mountains were copper mountains. In the first chariot were red horses, and in the second chariot black horses, and in the third chariot were white horses, and in the fourth chariot horses speckled, part coloured. And I proceed to say to the angel, who was speaking with me, and what are these, my lord? So the angel was answered and said to me, these are the 4 spirits of the heavens that are going forth and having taken their station before the Lord of the whole earth. You see, these are spirits. They're not literal people. These are 4 judgments that are riding. I want to show you a little clip of a video called The Unexpected Connection Between COVID-19 and the First Horseman of the Apocalypse. By Watchman Alexander.
Does coronavirus have something to do with the first sealed judgment of the book of Revelation? I know it sounds crazy, but I've developed a surprising new take, surprising even to me, about the identity of the first horseman of the apocalypse, who rides forth when that first seal is broken. He's just this year been unleashed on the world.
This brother is dealing with the colour white, the actual meaning.
We need to take a close look at these four things and treat them as clues to his identity. The four observations are, number one, the color of the horse. Number two, the rider's weapon. Number three, the item given to the rider. And number four, the rider's actions. The color. The first rider's horse is white. That word white, used in Revelation 6:2, is the Greek word lukos. That's Strong's 3022. And it comes from the root luk, meaning light. Strong's lexicon defines it as, I'm going to pull this up for us. Here we go. Lukos, you can see it spelled out here. Comes from Luke, light. And it's defined as light, brilliant, or bright. Brilliant from whiteness, dazzling white, and there are some sub-definitions of the garments of angels and of those exalted to the splendor of the heavenly state, or shining or white garments worn on festive or state occasions, or of white garments as the sign of innocence and purity of the soul. It can also mean dead white like the color of ripening grain. But primarily, it's about brilliance. It's about something being super white. In other words, it reflects a lot of light. Now let's take a look at a few verses wherein this word is used to describe the dazzling quality of this whiteness. He was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his garments became as white as the light. So lukos is white in this verse, and it's as white as light. And then let's jump down to Luke 9:29, where we read about the same event, just from a different author. As he was praying, the appearance of his face was altered, and his clothing became white, lukos, and dazzling. And then let's see about the description of an angel instead of Yeshua. And we find that, again, his appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white, lukos, as snow. So this white is bright like something that puts out luminance like lightning. Snow also, such a reflector, it's almost like it has its own light. It doesn't, but it almost sometimes looks like it does if it's in bright sunlight. So as I said, Apollo was not originally a sun god, but somehow during the 5th century BC he came to be treated as identical with the sun. And then one of his titles became Phobos, meaning bright and pure. Phobos is analogous to lukos. So that's very telling to me, even though he wasn't originally a sun god. There was a previous Mesopotamian god who was also a god of plagues, and he was associated with one phase of the sun. Not the sun in general, but the highest, I guess the most powerful phase, which was the summer sun. He was associated with that phase of the sun, and he also had plagues as part of his identity as a god. So maybe that's where Apollo got it from, but it just took a little while for that link to be made. But by the time that Revelation was written, yes, certainly he was thought of that way. But now, here's another association with white that might be relevant. What color do doctors and medical professionals wear? White. White. Totally white coats and hazard suits. They're both white. Apollo played a dual role as both one who poisons or sickens with his plague arrows and one who heals those plagues. So the white could be hinting at the pivotal part played by the world's medical community as this horse rides forth. I'm not saying I know that. It's just an interesting possibility to me. It's just very telling that it's always white when you come to the medical community. And not just white, not like off-white, it's bright white. So when I talk about the crown in a few minutes...
Well, isn't that very, very interesting about this white? You know, doctors and nurses wear, but also, more importantly, this word white, that the white horseman, the first one, rider, which I believe is the plague and pestilence and coronavirus, like this man, brother. The word the ancient Greek word for white, according to this one, is leukos, original Greek. It's not just white, it's really bright white, like, brilliant white, like the rays of the sun. And he linked it to Apollo, who wasn't originally, a sun god, but wasn't originally in the sun god. He was given that attribute, and before him, prior, was a Mesopotamian god, also, had also represented phases of the sun. He was attributed to the plague. And did you know that Apollo has a dual role also? He had arrows that he could, in other words, he could kill, he could shoot poisonous arrows, or he could shoot arrows that would heal, so he would have a dual purpose. You see, that's very interesting. You see, that's why, and then both Apollo and this Mesopotamian god before that was, they were attributed, they had plague. They were, what do you call it? They could do plagues. It wasn't just a sun god, but attributed to the able to do plagues. And as I said in other previous parts, the original word for virus, virus, is liquid poison. So it seems to fit, with Apollo shooting either poisonous arrows or arrows that would heal. So he had a dual role before he was a sun god. Ezekiel 5, we read Ezekiel 5, 15 to 17. It said, Ezekiel 5, 15 to 17, and you must become a reproach, an object of reviling words, a warning example and a horror to the nations that all around you, when I do in you acts of judgment in anger and in rage and in raging reproofs. I am Yahweh, have spoken. And when I send the, listen to this, injurious arrows of the famine upon you, which must prove to be ruinous, with which arrows I shall send to bring you people to ruin, even famine I shall increase upon you people, and I will break your rods around with ring-shaped lobes and are suspended, and I will send upon you people famine and injurious beasts, and they must leave your children, and pestilences and blood themselves will pass along through you, and a sword I shall bring upon you. I myself, Yahweh, have spoken. So there's always famine, pestilence, and war when he shoots his arrows of judgment in Ezekiel 5, 16 to 17. When I sent my injurious arrows, God said, to bring judgment on those who turned away from God and his commandments. Unfortunately, the first white horse, is the coronavirus God has sent on the earth, because they've turned away from God and they're unfaithful and break his commandments. And, enough is enough. Now, the coronavirus, this is the first horseman, which is, at the moment, is, trotting. I believe it will get even worse, this pestilence, this white horse. Now I'll show you a little bit more about the crown. Corona. I will leave the link to this video, the link between white horseman, I believe the first seal's broken like this, brother, and the COVID pandemic, coronavirus, God's judgment. We as Christians should not fear whatsoever what's coming, because God's will, God preserves the faithful, as he says in the Bible. Anyway, I will show you some more.
they were thinking that way a century ago, they were probably thinking that way centuries before that. Crazy thing about COVID-19 is that it isn't very deadly, but that doesn't really matter because it's the fearful response to COVID-19 that has been so harmful. The economic and social effects are the real threat here, at least for now. It's possible that the virus could mutate and become more deadly, but at the moment, people's fear is the biggest problem, and fear is one of the best tools of the devil. Whereas the first horseman enters the stage with a bow in his hand, he does not hold a crown. A spirit that's off stage, unidentified, hands him a crown. In English, we only have one word for crown, but in Hebrew and Greek, there are two distinct words. One of them is the crown of royalty, the diadema. That's Strong's 4735. The other is the victor's crown, usually a wreath of leaves, which is called the Stephanos, and that's Strong's 1238. This is the Stephanos. The Stephanos was a garland given to winners of games or significant conflicts, and on a few other occasions it could be given as well. In fact, let me take you to look at the definition. This is not the page I thought I was going to pull up, but this works just fine. This shows you the two different words, Stephanos and diadema. And it says, in classical literature, Stephanos does not denote the kingly or imperial crown. Instead, it refers to the crown that symbolized victory in the games, civic worth, military valor, nuptial joy, and festal gladness. The Stephanos was woven of oak, ivy, parsley, myrtle, olive, or gold leaves, which imitated these plants, and of flowers such as violets or roses. A Stephanos was a wreath or garland, but never the emblem or sign of royalty. Do you know what the name coronavirus means? Corona is Latin for crown. Here you go in the online etymology dictionary. From Latin corona, a crown, a garland. In ancient Rome, especially, a crown or garland bestowed for distinguished military service, or winning the games, etc., etc. And then down here you'll see, with many extended senses in botany, anatomy, etc., a coronavirus, named in 1969, is so called for the spikes that protrude from its membranes and resemble the tines of a crown or the corona of the sun. Wow. What this is telling us is that corona equals Stephanos. Remember that neither John nor any of his audience knew what a germ was. The words to describe germs, viruses, and microbes didn't even exist in Greek. If God was to have used the word coronavirus in Revelation 6:2, it would have had no meaning at all to anyone reading the Bible before the 20th century. Is it possible that the first horseman was not handed a crown at all, a garland in the literal sense, but actually a coronavirus, the ammunition for his bow? I don't know, but I think it's a really good possibility. How else would God have communicated such a thing to John or John's readers? It makes a lot of sense to me. Now, without a doubt, the organization that was most responsible for the world's response to COVID-19 was the World Health Organization, the WHO. There's even some evidence that they had a hand in the development and release of the virus, but that's a topic for another time. The important thing right now is that the WHO directed the global response to the pandemic. Now, I happened to look at the WHO logo a few days ago, and lo and behold, the largest element of their logo is a Stephanos crown, a corona surrounding the earth. But it gets even better, or should I say worse. We also see in the logo an ancient symbol superimposed over the earth, almost as if it's placed in authority over the whole world. It's called the Staff of Asclepius. The symbol of the staff with the serpent around it is from the Greek myth of Asclepius, not to be confused with the caduceus, which has two entwined snakes with wings. It's a related symbol, but different. Who was Asclepius? He was the god of healing, son of the god Apollo, and the nymph Coronis. Yes, folks, his mother's name was Coronis. I'm not making this up. So the WHO logo carries the corona and the symbol of the son of Coronis. Can this possibly be a coincidence? That this symbol has to do with Apollo and Coronis? No way. The serpents in both the caduceus and the staff of Asclepius represent multiple things, but one primary meaning relates to the shedding of skin. Because the ancients believed that the way a serpent sloughs off its outer layer of skin represents restoration and new beginning.
So, oh wow, he made some. This brother, did some research, checking a lot of things. As I said, I'm going to leave the link. I really, that makes it more likely, more that it does mean pestilence or coronavirus or God's judgment that's happening now, the white horseman, rather than the Antichrist that's going to make a covenant. He said some important things about the word crown. The white horseman's handed a crown, and the ancient Greek word Stephanos means crown, and it can either mean military victory, military or Olympic victory, but it's equal to corona. Would you believe it? And just exactly like the name coronavirus. You see? So you got the crown, handed a crown, Stephanos, which is equivalent to corona, which means crown. See the link. And as I said in the previous video, bow, the original Greek is toxon, which you get the word toxic from, or poison. So if you put poisonous corona, poisonous crown together, and coronavirus is basically what it actually means. Coronavirus actually means a virus with a crown. So, and he made a very interesting point. Well, I thought very interesting, because he's not wearing a crown, the first horseman, but handed a crown. He made a very interesting point. Instead of being handed an arrow, because he hasn't got any arrows, what if he was handed a crown, or the coronavirus, he said, as an ammunition to fire his arrow? Handed a crown, because this virus, it's got spikes on it. It looks like a crown. It's quite interesting. Also, he said about the WHO, the World Health Organization, about it having. I think I've got a picture about the health organization. It has a crown round the earth. Let me read this is a WHO, World Health Organization leads global effort to expand universal health coverage. We direct, the WHO says, and coordinate the world's response to health emergencies like the coronavirus. So that's what they do. They're supposed to direct and coordinate world response to health emergencies. Founded in 1948, who is the United Nations agency that connect nations, partners and people to promote health, to keep the world safe. It says here. He even said that he found out that they might be responsible for the development and release of the coronavirus. I won't be surprised. He said that the World Health Organization, he showed, has the link between the coronavirus and the World Health Organization. He said the World Health Organization's got, as you can see here, it's got a corona all the way around the earth. But he also said, he speaks about this, that's the World Health Organization. There's a pole with a snake on it. And he's saying that that's an ancient symbol of the staff of Asclepius. I don't know if I said it correctly. Son of Apollo. Remember, he's supposed to be the sun god, and originally it was, he shot poisonous arrows, and his mother was Coroneus. And his mother, of Asclepius, whatever, was the son of Apollo, and his mother's name was Cronus. Would you believe it? So much coincidences, but but there's this, I mean, I can add a little bit to that. See, about the, who, with the, I know who their God is, Satan, the serpent, but where that, I believe that comes from, is they always twist something good and make it bad, because in Numbers 21, I'll add to that, it said they sinned against God in the wilderness, so God sent poisonous snakes to strike down the people in the wilderness. Verse 7 or 21, Numbers 21, finally the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned because we have spoken against God and against you. Intercede with God that he may remove the serpents from us. And Moses went interceding on behalf of the people. Then God said to Moses, Yahweh, make for yourselves a fiery snake and place it upon a pole. And it must occur that anyone has been bitten. He then has to look at the pole with the serpent and must keep alive. So Moses at once made a serpent of copper and placed it on a pole. And it did occur that if a serpent had bitten a man and he gazed upon it at the serpent, copper serpent, he then kept alive. So are we meant to, you see, like I said, the coronavirus is around the world, as you can see. That's a corona. Are we meant to look at the World Health Organization, to save us from the poisonous virus? You see, really, what it really means in John 3:16, and I'll finish off this, or 14, John 3:14, and just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up. Listen to this, that everyone believing in him may have everlasting life. So we look at Christ. So if you haven't come to know Christ, please do, because this white horseman is galloping now. This pestilence, the coronavirus, is God's judgment against sinful mankind. And we must look at Christ, just like they looked at, this pole with a serpent on it, to protect them from the poisonous serpents. We must look at Christ to protect us from this, whatever's happening now. For God loved the world, and it says here, and just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, that everyone believing in him might have everlasting life. For God loved the world so much that he gave his only begotten Son. He sacrificed him for forgiveness of our sins, in order that everyone exercising faith in him might not be destroyed, but have everlasting life. For God sent forth his Son into the world, not for him to judge the world, but for the world to be saved through him. He that exercises faith in him is not to be judged. He that does not exercise faith has been judged already, because he has not exercised faith in the name of the only begotten Son of God. Anyway, God bless and keep safe.